Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, everybody. This is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And I've got with me today a woman named Stacey. And Sally and I just met this week, and she has a fascinating story. I'm looking forward to you guys hearing it. Let me just read a short introduction to who Sally is. Sally was made aware of the unseen forces that can guide and support us when she was young. And then 11 years ago, she had an existential crisis that sent her on a path of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual connection. And then what happened last year in May of 2019, her son, Tommy, he passed. And that actually led her to leaning into her spiritual connection for guidance, strength, and comfort while she was simultaneously going through the grieving process. But Sally experienced a connection with her son pretty much immediately. And that connection also expanded to include her guides and others a few months later. So Sally started getting signs from Tommy like right from the very beginning. And we're going to talk about some of the signs and then recent development where she started a whole brand new way of communication with Tommy. So with that, I want to introduce Stacey, and say welcome to Grief to Growth.
Thanks, Brian. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to meet you. So we just talked a couple of days ago, and we were talking about a mutual friend of ours, someone that we both know, Marcus Lang, who gets signs from his daughter in spirit. And you commented on there, and that's how you and I met. And you were talking about some of the signs you got. So I said, well, you've got to come on the show and tell us about it. So you said you were saying that you knew there was something going on in the spirit world when you were young. So start there and tell me what you felt.
Okay. Around the age of 12, I had a little trauma happen in my life, quite serious trauma, and it was troubling. And I come from a very tiny island called Guernsey, and I lived within a walking distance of the sea. And I would go to the beach with these issues, with my concerns, and I would, look out over the ocean, listen to the waves, smell the seaweed, and in my mind, I would think things through, the people involved, how they were feeling, what I could do to help, and I never felt alone. I just knew I was supported. For want of a better way, I just knew something else existed. It was unseen. And I would often leave the beach knowing what the next best thing would be to do. And I would do that for years, go to the beach and do that without ever thinking what it actually construed, that I was connecting spiritually to whatever was. I never put any thought into it. It was just what I realized that that was about it. But it was something I didn't carry through into my adult life.
Yeah. So you felt that connection from a very, very early age.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had some sort of a crisis or something that triggered you 11 years ago. Tell me about that.
I did. I have a lovely family, 2 beautiful kids, happily married for over 30 years. We lived in many countries in the world and got to experience many things. And I found myself disappearing down a rabbit hole of emotional pain. The trauma I mentioned from earlier in my life that occurred as a teenager and a bit later on, I'd sort of done the British thing of brushing it off and getting on with life. And I'd never seen anybody. I'd never dealt with the emotions or anything. I think, they were the emotions attached to that trauma just lay dormant for a long time, and they would come out in different ways. They would, in different situations, which created the same sort of fears. They kind of come up, and it resulted eventually to me just, having an existential crisis, a dark night of the soul. I reached the point of why am I alive? Why am I here? I mean, what is the point of this? This pain is just excruciating. And I realized, at the same time that all the answers lay within. They weren't external, they were within. And that's where I had to look, and that's what I had to discover, and that's what I had to heal. And that's what I did for a good couple of years. I worked hard on myself. It's difficult sometimes to look in the mirror, but I did. And it was interesting. I had some therapy, great woman that helped me go back into my past and face those things and realize what were triggering emotions over the years. And I'm telling you this because it actually is quite important in grieving such a traumatic loss as a child.
Yeah.
Those things that you bury because they're too painful, they don't go away necessarily. They'll just lay dormant and can affect you in all sorts of ways. And so I learned how to deal with the trauma that had occurred, how to effectively process the emotions and release them, let them go. And as a result of that, over a couple of years, I developed spiritual practices. I began meditating, prayer, if you want to call it prayer. People often put a religious connotation on prayer. I talked. It wasn't prayer. I just talked. And it would happen in the mornings, but it would sometimes happen during the day. And during that span of time before Tommy's accident, there were a few times where I had knowings come in. There was one time I was walking late at night with my dog, and an issue, again, from a long ago in the past, when it came up, brought me a lot of pain. I literally wanted to turn it over. I said, you take this. I don't want to carry this anymore. I don't understand it. And out of nowhere, this voice, which I can't say is masculine or feminine, literally put knowledge in my mind that I did not know, and it was gone. That was the end of that. And that happened a couple of times. Feelings of being surrounded by God or source, just a couple of times. I absolutely felt it in those years, but nothing, as big as what happened after my son passed. But during that time, as I healed, I got involved anonymously in helping others that were in tremendous emotional pain. I joined an online community. It's not Facebook. It's a lot of people there, and nobody knows who I am apart from my first name and my affinity for sunflowers. And it's a standing joke in the family. If I was to die the next day, there'd be nobody at the funeral, but there'd be many people around the world that would mourn my loss. And I was just fine with that. I'm quite happy in that type of role. So that's really the background story of on the day of Tommy's accident. I'd never felt more spiritually fit, I'm mentally fit. Yeah. I was primed for it.
Yeah, it's interesting how life works that way, right? So we have these traumas, and I think it's common people bury them and think that they're buried, but they seem to always come up at some point in life. And then we go through this dark night of the soul. And then you started working on yourself. So tell me about Tommy. What happened with Tommy?
Well, first of all, Tommy was just such a fun child. He was shy, more of a listener than a talker, and that was as a boy. And he grew into an adult the same way. But people were always drawn to be in his company. He had a part-time job where he'd save his money to go on his backpacking trips each year, different places in the world. And where he worked, people that would work there that didn't know him socially came to me at the funeral and said, he whenever he was on duty at the same time as them, they would always go and spend 5 minutes in his company because he always walked away feeling better. And that pretty much is what everybody said. There was something quite special about him. Do I think he knew what was going to happen? No, I don't. Certainly not at a conscious level. He was very happy. At the time, he was just happy. He was still in school, taking a degree, he had his part-time job, he was traveling. He'd grown into his skin as an adult, so he wasn't quite as shy as he had been growing up, but and he was loved by everybody, wicked sense of humor, and he had a maturity well beyond his years. he kind of knew the important things in life.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't chase materialism or whatever. He earned money to go and explore a new country, or to spend time with his friends and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It was lovely. But so that's the backdrop to him. And he has a sister just under 2 years older than he is.
Mm-hmm.
On that day, the night before, he was due to come home and watch the last episode of Game of Thrones with his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was coming home, not going out with his mates, he took his dad's car. And for whatever reason, he didn't come home. And, waking in the morning, just assumed he was sleeping over at a friend's house. He often does, not a big deal, apart from the fact that it's unusual for him to do that if he had his dad's car, but, so be it.
Yeah.
And I got up and I went to take the dogs out to use the bathroom side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big affinity with animals or living creatures, excluding British house spiders and mosquitoes. I think there'll always be a work in progress there, and I always greet them in my day, no matter if it's a lizard or a, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I went to the side of the house and there was this huge turtle, enormous, the biggest turtle I'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. And we locked eyes. We just locked stares. Mm-hmm. And I went cold. I went ice cold. I've never felt so disturbed in all my life. Very, very unsettled. I didn't know what it was trying to convey, but I didn't want to know it. And I just stared at it, and then I broke the gaze, got the dogs, and went inside the house. That's never happened before. And that happened probably about an hour after Tommy had passed. It was going to be another 4 hours before we knew.
Oh, wow.
But that was about an hour after he passed. And basically, he was coming home, 6 a.m. in the morning. He was going too fast, distracted, came off the road, hit a tree. The car flipped and burst into flames. And that happened. So he'd already passed an hour before that turtle moment. And I didn't think too much more of it. And ironically, I went online to this group where I supported whole bunches of people and did what I did every day. And that day I put in, posted a load of Viktor Frankl quotes. I don't know if you heard, Man's Search for Meaning. Mm-hmm. So before I knew of the accident, and those quotes, I would go a year later on his first anniversary back to the group and say, those quotes that I posted on that day before I knew of Tommy's passing are as relevant today in my life as they were there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you're familiar, but, one of the most famous quotes he has is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, you have the power to choose your reaction. And in your reaction, there's the opportunity for growth. And that's huge.
Wow.
And I did that and talked with my mother via Skype. The morning, I had no inkling. I just assumed, I got a text from my husband, Kevin, is he back yet? No. And the next thing I know, the police were knocking at the door. And that was about 4 hours after the turtle.
Wow. And
it occurred a mile away from home, at an intersection just down the road, really, that you pass all the time. As you know, I don't care how prepared you think you are for anything in life, that demolishes you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. That day, the shock hormones kicked in. The pain and shock was going to ebb and flow for months. But on that first day, I went into his room about an hour after the police had left, and it looked like somebody that was due to return. The bed was unmade, and there's a towel on the floor, and so I made his bed, and that's the first time I remember talking to him. I made his bed, and I was in mother mode, and I was reassuring him. I said, I'm not sure where you are right now, but just know we're going to be okay.
Wow.
You're going to see a lot of pain. You're going to see a lot of tears, your dad and me and Phoebe, but we'll be all right. I promise you that. I'm hoping you're okay. And
Yeah.
that was my first conversation with him shortly after the police had left. And that was going to be a reoccurring sort of reassurance talk, because I knew he existed,
Okay.
because 10 years before my father passed, and my brother and sister wanted to pay respects to the body, etc. And so I went with them, the three of them went, and I saw the body. And I remember thinking as I was looking, that's not my dad.
Yeah.
That the expression wasn't his. That wasn't him. And I knew that was just the carcass almost.
Yeah.
That was not him.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, was 2 months after that, we were in Peru. We were going to trek to Machu Picchu, and we were climatizing to the altitude. And I'd gone on top of a hilltop, and it was over his birthday. And I saw this tiny little white dot in the sky, and I thought it was a plane, an international plane flying overhead. And then I realized it was moving in an odd way, and I initially thought that plane's in trouble. And then over the space of 10 minutes, it actually came and landed right in front of me, and it was a white feather.
Oh, wow. Wow.
There were no other birds in the sky. I have a photo of the sky and where I was, and I have the feather framed. And that proved to me, we lived in Florida. My dad was back in Guernsey, and here I was in Peru on the top of a hill.
Yeah.
He touched base with me. It didn't matter where his body was.
Right.
Didn't matter where I lived.
Right.
I could be anywhere. And he came and touched base. I didn't pursue a connection with him. That was very special. I did what it was meant to, and I just carried on with life. But of course, that memory came back once this happened with Tommy. And so I knew he existed. And the following day, the turtle experience came back. And I remembered, his favorite toy growing up. Stuffed toy was a turtle. One of the last presents he bought me was this mug I'm drinking out of. It's got turtles covering it. He went to cricket with his dad. And a lovely friendship that I've recently developed with someone called Raven. She tells me that the turtle represents the Mother Earth, and to her, what happened to me that morning was Mother Earth offering her condolences for what had happened. And that's beautiful. That really resonated with me when she told me that. But so there we have it.
So how old was Tommy when he passed?
He was 21.
21. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And 6 days later, I went to the crash site because I knew his friends had set up a shrine, and I was aware of the conditions of what had happened, and I wanted to see the shrine so I could thank them at his funeral. And there's so much car wreckage still left there, molten personal possessions and so on. It was just mind-blowing. So I sent my brother back to get some boxes, and again, I remember I talked to Tommy the whole way through. I was reassuring him. I'm looking at this stuff thinking, what was it like for him? And I said, I hope you're all right. I said, if you're seeing me doing this, don't worry, we're going to be fine. And those sort of conversations were happening every day. The funeral was packed. People came. My quiet boy, a listener more than a talker, with a wicked sense of humor, packed that place. People came from out of state. There were people that he'd never met that had tattoos of his name, people that he'd gamed with since he was little. They were just in total shock. This guy who touched so many lives. And I wish, ironically, when you think it's a funeral of your child, it was actually a very special day. And when I look back on it, I look back at it with fond memories, ironically.
Yeah, it's interesting because you say that you don't think he knew that he was going to transition early, but as I talk to parents who've had kids that have died early, it seems like almost universally they're special kids. They're people that touch people's souls, and so my daughter was the same way. Her service was packed. She was 15, and she had only been in public school for like 2 years. So, I was like, I didn't think anybody would even know who she was, but, there were just tons of people there. So I think there's something about these kids that they may not know at a conscious level, but I think at a soul level, I think they kind of know.
Actually, and you just made me remember, what was interesting to me then at the time was, firstly, he hadn't chosen his subjects for when he went back to school I mean, school was almost out for the summer in May, and he still hadn't chosen. His time was really ticking and he just hadn't done it. And secondly, he still hadn't decided where he was backpacking in the summer. He was kind of talking about Australia, maybe New Zealand this time. But it was May. He was due to be going in, he had the money saved and he hadn't actually gone ahead. And like in previous years, he would plot the routes, the countries and so on. He'd done nothing. Interesting on that front. I think, I just feel he didn't know on a conscious level at all, but a subconscious level, perhaps he didn't do that planning for the very reasons you say.
Yeah. Well, my daughter made a comment like a few weeks before she passed. She was playing with her sister. We were up in Columbia, a couple hours from where we live at my brother's house. And she made a comment. She was playing with her sister and her cousins. Like, when I die, I'd like to be cremated and buried under a tree. She was 15 and she was healthy. Wow. And we didn't learn that till after she had passed. And we were talking to my daughter about what should we do in terms of arrangement. Should we, bury her or have her body cremated or whatever? And we decided for cremation. And my other daughter said, yeah, that's what Shayna wanted. And we're like, well, how did you know this? And she told us the story. So I don't think she knew on a conscious level, but that was an odd thing for a 15-year-old to say.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And it's interesting, you prompt me to remember something else. About 6 weeks or so before the accident, for whatever reason, he and I talked about the afterlife. In our family, my husband is a Catholic. I would just class myself as spiritual. My daughter has her own concepts of spirituality. She's very spiritual in her own way. My son at that age just couldn't wrap his head around anything existing afterwards. And we had this talk, and he knew about my practices and what I did. And he said, Mum, I don't want to hurt you. I just can't see it. I think just when we die, that's it. And I remember it was such a lovely conversation, me looking at him thinking, I think you'll probably change your mind, as you get older. I'm sure kids go through that of not quite believing they can possibly be. You're only 21. So that's really what he died. That was his perception at that time. And when the signs became obvious, one of my very first conversations with him was, well, I bet you were surprised to find him still existed. Yeah.
So you knew right away because of the preparation you had done, your spiritual practice. You knew that Tommy wasn't gone, and you were speaking to him, saying, if you can hear me or if you can see me. So when did you start getting signs that he was actually hearing you?
Well, first of all, the funny thing is, at the funeral, we played The Who, Tommy, Can You Hear Me?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of his friends aren't religious. And so we had a prayer in the middle. We had a moment of silence and we played that. It was a young person's funeral. We played his Spotify music beforehand and so on. And I, every day after the funeral, I would go in the garden first thing in the morning and I would sing that first line. I would look at the sky and just gently sing the first line. And then I would talk to him about his dad, his sister, me, the animals, anything and everything, every single day. And it would start with that line. I danced the dance of denial and doubt and is it real, as many of us do with signs. He got me on the third week. And this is an interesting story because it explains something relating to signs that happened a little later on. Nobody had been in his car. He'd been driving his dad's car that night. Nobody had been in his car. And I suddenly thought, I ought to check it out in case there's any food in there. This is Florida. So I said to Kevin, I'm just going to go and check in and go and have a look in the car. And he said, well, turn the engine over while you're there just to make sure everything's okay. So I took the keys and I sat in the seat, and there's personal possessions of his. There's the pens and T-shirt and so on. And tears streamed down my face. It was such a painful experience. And I turned the engine over as Kevin told me to. And then I thought, I wonder, because whenever I drove the car, I just got a car. He and I shared that car for quite some time. And I would always listen to CDs and he would always turn the radio on. I wondered what he'd been last listening to. And I turned the radio on. And the song was by Mumford and Son, and I'm a mum, I'm English, Mumford and Son. And it was, I will wait for you. And as the song is playing, I felt the car just fill with his presence. And my breath is taken away. The tears have stopped, and the song is belting out the chorus. And I got out of the car and I thought, surely not. No, that can't be. And I walked around to the back of the house and I sort of propped my arms on the fence there to think it through. And I felt a presence to my left, and I glanced over, and there's a cardinal sat on the fence where my arms had propped, just staring at me. And that took me over. I thought, okay. And that's when I made the joke to him about being surprised that he continued to exist. But the big one for me, and I wrote about it online, was at 6 weeks, I saw him. He appeared before me.
Wow.
I'd been to the funeral home that day, and he had inadvertently told me more about the state of Tommy's body than I had known about. And it was horrible. It was terrifying and really upsetting. And I came home. Yeah, I cleared it out of my system on the way home. Trust me, I shouted and sobbed and whatever as I drove home.
Right.
And that night I sat outside under the stars and I talked for him for a couple of hours about anything and everything. And at one point I did mention about what the funeral director had said. And I was just concerned because I'd started reading afterlife books by now. And a lot of people say that as they leave the body, they look back and see their body. And I was really concerned if he had done that, it would have been very traumatizing. And so I thanked him for the signs that I'd been given. And I said, if possible, could you just let me know that you're okay, that you're not traumatized if you did, actually see the body. And I braced myself for something happening out there but it was just the normal night breezes and night noises. And I finished. I was very peaceful, as I always was after these talks. I came in, I started just to tidy things up, ready to turn in for the night. And as I turned in the family room area, there's a small hallway that goes to the living room, the sitting room area. And he just went, pink. He was there. And then bing, he was, as fast as he came, he didn't gradually materialize. He was just there. And then he was just gone. And he was wearing his green, I can still remember it to this day, green sweatshirt, white shorts. He had one foot on the last of the stairs, and he was smiling, looking directly into my eyes and smiling. And whoa. I had no idea that could even be done. At this stage, I didn't have a Facebook account. I had no contact with any other parents. I'd met one person locally, and that was it. So at this stage, I was pretty much doing this on my own. And I'm grateful for that, actually. Those 3 months that I had no real contact with others, I knew from what had happened to me earlier what I needed to do. My connection to spirit was based on just unconditional love. The God I knew wasn't judgmental. He didn't punish. So I knew I had to lean into my beliefs, lean into my connection for guidance, for strength, for comfort, to help me and help my family get through this. And at the same time, I needed to honor my grief. I needed to feel everything that needed to be felt and honor it. So in those 3 months, that's really what I did. I, tried to help with the family, to help see us through, leaned into my grief and leaned into my connection without having any, and started reading. As my connections were building, I started reading books, and by the time I came online, I was connecting daily. I had a daily connection. I'd seen him, I'd heard him. The signs were just wonderful. And then I became aware of how many people were not getting those signs. And then it became a quest for me of why.
Yeah.
How can how can I help these people? And I was a closet person so far as my connection was concerned. For the first few months online, I didn't tell anybody I had connected. I dove into the saddest places, the most painful places, and I used every life tool that I could to try and help pull those people out.
Yeah.
Your mind muscles, your thought muscles are like physical muscles. The more they're exercised, the stronger they get. So the more you think about that one day, the more hold it will have on your mind, and the more it will affect you emotionally. Those are the kind of things I would go in and talk about, but not about my connection. And it was not because I was scared of what people would think. I was really sensitive to those parents that weren't connecting. I didn't understand why. And the last thing I wanted to do was make anybody feel less than.
Right.
And, what happened in 8 months later, 7-8 months after he passed, I decided I'd get a medium reading. I didn't need one. In fact, I'd asked Tommy, would you mind if I got one? Yeah, we're connecting. I didn't want to insult him thinking, oh, this isn't good enough. But I'd really like to have more of a two-way thing, if that's okay. And he then sent me, he wrote me a text. He wrote me a line on my phone. I need to speak to you soon. And that was the first time he did that. And so I saw two mediums, which I won't recommend. They were mixed, and they were some good stuff in them, but also some stuff that opened up a can of worms on how he died. I had, because he'd materialized in front of me, and the police reports and the autopsy, etc., I'd put that to bed. I'd moved past it, and they'd opened a couple of things that were swimming around in my mind again, which was annoying. So I said to Tommy, I went outside, talked to him, I said, look, I'm going to get a third medium, because I need now to put what they've raised to bed. And I booked a medium, and she was phenomenal. Within 3 minutes, she brought him through by his first name. And then she said, and he tells me there's some confusion over how he died. Just incredible. And it's that reading is interesting because firstly, she put that to bed. And what had happened, she told me, was the other mediums had psychically put themselves in the accident scenario and were generating their own thoughts on what happened, as opposed to what really did, which was interesting. And I can see how that could be done. After the reading, she and I talked. She gave me an opportunity to tell her about my own connections. And partway through the reading, she kept going on about music. She said, he's showing me music. You're creating music. Did you create the music for the funeral? And I said, no, that's one area that I didn't have anything to do with. I said, no, he's definitely showing it's something that you did, and it has to do with music. And it was only after the reading, when we were talking, became clear what he was meaning. And it's important from a science perspective. All those months I've been saying, he's just amazing, how he's creating these signs, how he's doing these things. It's just incredible. And what he was saying was, it wasn't just him. It was me too. I created the music in that sign that I told you about 3 weeks after the accident. I didn't just randomly turn on the radio and, whoa, there's a song, and I connected with Tommy. He planted a thought in my mind to turn the radio on. And I was receptive enough at that stage, probably because of, many years of connection, to get it and turn the radio on.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.grief2growth.com, or text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF2GROWTH to make a financial contribution. And now back to Grief to Growth.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you just for a second. I think that's really important what you said, because I'm an engineer, so I'm always wondering, like, how do these signs work, right? So do they put the music on? Do they tell the DJ to play the song at a certain time? Or are they putting thoughts in our head? And what you just said, I got goosebumps when you said it, because that's been my impression. I think they put thoughts in our head. Turn the radio on now. Turn this on now. And a lot of things, the thing about science is the timing and recognizing it. So like you saw the turtle, some people might just say, hey, I just saw a turtle, but you put that together as you thought back on it, or seeing the cardinal. So I think a lot of times when people say I'm not getting signs, I think they're just not seeing them. They're just not receptive to them.
One of the questions further down the line that I asked Tommy, as my knowings increased, my knowings got stronger. As I realized that part of the equation, it just expanded as I trusted it, and I opened myself to it. It expanded and expanded. And I'll just say, actually, from a musical perspective, quite a while later, I'm sat in the garden. My husband's out in the car, and the knowing comes through from Tommy, get Dad to turn the car radio on. I think, am I really going to risk doing this and being silly? But because it doesn't come through as his voice, it comes as thoughts. So I text Kevin and I say, what time are you coming home? And he says around 6ish. And I say, okay, well, when you get in the car, just turn the car radio on, but don't change the channel. And that was it, because he knows I'm connected with Tommy. And next thing I know, he gets in the car to come home and he sends me a photo of the radio and what's playing. And his T-shirt. The band and the song that are playing on the radio are identical to the song that on the T-shirt he's wearing, AC/DC, Back to Black.
Wow.
And now the thing here is Tommy couldn't do that directly to his dad. His dad can't wrap his head around all of this. He believes it's happening, but he wouldn't have got that. But I got it and asked him to, and he went ahead and did. And that was an interesting sort of learning curve as well.
The other thing I'm thinking, Sally, as we're having this conversation is, you're talking about all the prep work you did, and you're being open, and your receptiveness to this, just in general before Tommy passed. So that you were kind of a clear channel, I guess, even when he passed, because you were open to it. And I just had something happen to me, like it was just 2 weeks ago. I walk every morning. And I was like, when I go home, I'm going to make pancakes. And I hardly ever make pancakes because it's just my wife and myself. And I used to make them for the girls when they were here. That was like a special thing we do on Saturday morning. So I come home, I made pancakes for breakfast that morning. Like 2 days later, I had a reading with the medium, and she brings up pancakes. And she says, you used to make pancakes for the girls and you would put chocolate chips in Shayna's. And that was really weird because, like I said, I never make pancakes, but I was out that day. I just had this thought: when you get home, make pancakes. And then, so it's weird how that all works.
My car radio signs got massive.
Yeah.
And I'll tell, because this ties in with prayer and sending love out. Towards his anniversary, my daughter had put a compilation together of videos and photos and had put Elton John's song Rocket Man to it. And I played it for the first time in the garden. I was sat in the garden, I'm listening. And I've done this before with different people, and I know it's received. And I poured my love to Tommy into the universe as I listened to the song over and over. I just poured it and poured it and poured it out there. And the song finished, and I had tears and so on. And the knowing was to go and switch the car radio on. And I went to switch the car radio on, and the song playing was Rocket. And within the song, Elton John's Rocket Man is actually quoted in the song.
Oh, wow.
That happened immediately afterwards. That's how easily you're heard. And not just with my son, somebody's husband passed, and there was such a touching video of the two of them that happened very close to the passing. And I went in the garden. I was so touched by it, and I poured that same love into the universe for this couple and for this person that had passed, poured it out to him. And he came to visit. He was one of my first people outside of Tommy that came to see me, and with a feather and a message for his wife. And that again is how effective prayer and pouring your love out can be. It absolutely is received.
Before we start, you said you wanted me to remind you there were some signs you wanted to talk about.
Yes, well, just to show a couple. I wanted just a couple. I wanted one from a personality perspective, because they really do take their personalities to. One of my favorite signs belongs to this little guy. This is an official Manchester United teddy bear.
Okay.
And it was on a Sunday. I was due to it was Kelvin Chin had a session going on at 1, and I was due to go, and it was 20 minutes to 1. And I'd already said in the morning I was going to him. And I'm due to go and pick up a strimmer later on in the afternoon from Home Depot. And I get this thought, I have to go and pick up the strimmer now. And I hear it, and I'm like, no, I can't go and pick the strimmer up now. I have something I'm doing at 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And the thought came back. I'm literally arguing with the thought. Mm-hmm. No, I have a commitment. And it just got stronger. And now I'm curious. And I know that those sessions are taped and they'll be able to see it later.
Yeah.
So I told my husband, I'm going to go to Home Depot right now and go and pick up the strimmer. So I left. The crash site is, just down the road. Yeah. And I'll turn right at that intersection to go to Home Depot. But as I'm going down the road, I get the feeling I need to go to the crash site. So I go to the crash site, park on the grass verge, and I'm told to turn the car radio on. So I turn it on, and the song playing is Photograph. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, photograph. And I check my phone for on this day in previous years, was there a relevancy? Mm-hmm. Didn't see anything. So I just take a photo through the windscreen of the area where there is a shrine where the crash site had been. And then off I toddled to go to Home Depot. Straight away, I know that I've not done the right thing. That comes through as a big, big feeling. I've missed something. So I go to Home Depot and I pick up the strimmer. And on the way back, I go back, park on the grass verge. I think I photographed. Well, maybe I'm supposed to take a photo of the flowers, etc., around the lamppost. Maybe there are some new flowers there, and I'm supposed to take a photo. So off I go. I get out of the car, walk over. In between the flowers, this little teddy bear has been tucked, still with a cardboard certificate on, is there. And I know instinctively that I'm supposed to bring it home. As I pick it up to take it to the car, I get this euphoric feeling inside of me, really happy feeling. I'm laughing because we were due torrential rain and thunderstorms that afternoon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as I walked to the car, and it was just so funny, I get in the car and I'm just about to drive off, and I get the knowing again to turn the car radio on. I turn it on, and it's Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. Mm-hmm. Manchester United's signature tune is Glory, Glory, Manchester, Glory, Glory, Man United.
Wow.
I mean, look at how, but that doesn't come overnight. But that sort of dance between knowings and signs, it's very doable. And I know quite a lot of people that have learned how to do that.
Yeah.
Big runs, it's lovely.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying, because I'm actually taking a course right now with someone who's teaching people how to communicate with their loved ones in the afterlife. So it's, but what you're saying is we can all do it. We need to be open to it. We need to follow those prompts that we get and follow those feelings.
Sometimes you can make mistakes. It's not always going to get it right. You might think, and you do something and it's not. And that, just as with everything in life, you can learn a lot by your misses as opposed to your hits. So, just go for it and learn from the misses. That's happened to me. But that's how you refine what you know is, does that mean I'm supposed to do this? No, it didn't. It helps you to refine what you're getting in if you're brave enough to allow yourself to make the misses as well as the hits.
Yeah. So something happened in August of this year that kind of like kicked everything up another notch. So tell me about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, my Tommy decided, just to take it another step. It wasn't just Tommy, it's my guides as well. And in mid-August, I used my voice memo app on my phone to leave messages for myself, because I have a memory like a sieve. So if I'm doing something pops in my head I need to do later, I just leave a little voicemail. And it was in the middle of the afternoon, and I went to leave a message for myself in my garden, and there was one created at around 7 a.m. in the morning. And it had been given the title of X. Which is interesting, because if it just said recording number 10 or recording number 13, I may not have taken that much notice, because I often don't give my memos titles. I just, but it had actually been given the title X. And my son, like a lot of people, he plays with my phone all the time. So I knew this was likely something. And I listened, and you can hear me from at that time in the morning, pottering around. You can hear my footsteps. You can hear me talking to my husband at one stage. I come close to the phone, then I get very distant, and you hear the cat meowing for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And then within it all, then there is a whispered, Mum, oh my gosh. And it actually sounded like him. And I sent the recording to 3 friends, and they all got it. They all heard it. And I thought, how's that happening? That's just incredible. And interestingly enough, I'd already I'd had some contact with Susan Giesman before over grief, processing of grief for parents. And at this time, I am then being nudged to contact her again. And I'm literally pushing against it. No, I can't do that. She's really busy. I'm not, no. And it gets back and came again. And eventually I did. Sanaya had come to me basically, and I reached out to her and said, Sanaya's been, and here's a recording, you know, for you to listen to. She listened to it, she couldn't hear it. And I was just devastated. I couldn't make sense. I went back to her, I messaged her back and said, this makes no sense. Why would Sanaya tell me to come to you with this recording for you not to be able to hear it? And then Sanaya came, and she had the old lip twitching bit that occurs to her. She came back to me. Sanaya, it was a teaching moment for me. Sanaya absolutely confirms that it was your son that made that message. And the teaching moment is you have to, you know, stay firm in your beliefs. You know, it was him. You have to stay firm with that, because there are going to be people that are going to doubt this. They're going to doubt the fact that it was him, which is very true. And now, looking back in hindsight, that was a very important marker for me. When you think what's happened now, because there are going to be major doubters about what's happened since then. But you know, so it's a good moment for me then. And after that, he then made a further message. This time I spotted it. I was walking between the kitchen and the living room, and it was 6:30 in the morning, had a coffee in one hand, phone in the other, swung the phone up, and my voice memo app was open and it was recording. And so I popped my coffee cup down, plonked my hand on top of his urn, which just happens to be in that area, and I whispered hi. And I let it record until I'd sat down, stopped it recording, played it back, and after my hi, he says, hey. And I'm like, whoa, that was just amazing. And then he did a third one, and he said, Mum, again. And at that point, I'm thinking, I wonder if I can instigate doing this. By now, since last November, so for the last year, I've been able to feel the presence of spirit, whether it's Tommy or somebody else, I can feel it. So I know I can draw his energy toward me, and it's happened with other people as well. So that's what I did. I focused in on him, waited till I could feel his energy, hit the record button and recorded a message, leaving gaps to see if he'd answer. And he did. I played it back, and he was there, and it was just like mind-blowing. And then we started this new relationship.
So I have to ask you, did you know about EVPs before and this electronic voice phenomenon?
No, I knew about it, but I had no interest in it. I know they mash up human words and other background noises to make them. And frankly, I'm completely deaf in one ear and partially deaf in the other, which is hysterical that this has been brought to me. But as Susan said, what's happening with me is I am claircognizantly knowing those words a lot of the time, but that's part further down in the story. At this time, I then could just literally take my phone anywhere. I could walk the dog and talk to my son, be in the garden. I talked to him when I voted. I could feel his presence with me as I'm walking back to the car. I said to him, because he didn't have a chance to vote when he was here. I said, did you just vote with me? And his yes was louder than my question, and so on. So,
it's really interesting, Sally, because what you're doing is, for people that don't know, it's called electronic voice phenomenon. And what people have done in the past, there's different ways of doing it. Some is using human gibberish, and they create this background noise, and they'll ask a question, and then spirit, I guess, somehow manipulates it into forming words. But you're not doing that. You're just using the voice memo app on your phone, which is also what my friend Marcus, our friend Marcus is doing with his daughter and his guides in spirit. They're actually talking back and forth on the phone. So
I'm curious if he's, because I don't need any background noise.
yeah, I don't think he does either. But Marcus is a physical medium. So I'm working on the Soul Phone project. So this is all fascinating to me because we've got different people doing things different ways. Sonia Rinaldi is doing her thing in a different way. But I think people like yourself, I think you're like a medium. So somehow spirit is using your energy.
Well, I have had flashes of children through, and I was told that was going to happen long before it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't, and I think of Susan Giesman, Kat Bailey, really good friend. They're incredible what they can do. I just, no, I can't do anything like that.
Yeah, but it's a different. I think we have different types of mediumship, different type of abilities. Like I said, Sonia Rinaldi, she doesn't bill herself as a medium, but if you took her equipment and gave it to somebody else, they can't get the results that she gets.
This is where it got interesting for me. I actually was getting a little scared about what was happening, because it expanded. The next thing happened was my guide started using it. They leave messages. And from there, I spoke to somebody that makes EVPs with her son in the traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd had loads of messages from him. And the next day, and I'm talking to Tommy, he came to mind. And I now realize he put himself in my mind, and he left a message. And then I realized, if he left a message, maybe others could. And I went, I contacted a group. Heart Smiles is a group, and it's got 3 administrators in it. And I asked them if I could contact their children. And they said yes. And I went to each of their, all I do is, I knew what their children look like anyways. I think of their children, focus in, wait till I feel the energy come in. Then I hit record, and I ask questions. And from there, a friend's son just invited himself into a recording. And that was really lovely for her. It actually sounded like him, and it just grew. And I let people know, and then people started coming to me. And then I wanted to, just with my signs, always been really keen to make them as evidential as possible if I'm going to showcase them out there to help people believe. Same here. So give me questions. Preferably, I was learning that they prefer short answers. They are yes and no's, but also just single words. It's interesting. They're very deliberate in their choice of words. So they can say the minimum amount of words possible to say something much bigger.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. So I ask preferably yes or no answers, but things I don't know, just give me questions. And it's just been astonishing what's come back. And it's interesting because some children come through crystal clear. Some children come through sounding like themselves. Some don't. Some are so faint, the whispers, that I have to pull the volume up so high, you then have to use cleaning tools to take the static out. So you've got a whirling sound running through it, which is a shame because I have no background noise in these recordings. And some sound as if they're on the other side of a football pitch, just way in the distance, very clear, but way in the distance. Why they come through like that, I don't know, but I've asked my guides. I've had lots of feedback on this from my guides, and one of the things they've come back with is you have to learn to do this. It's not a given for everybody on the other side. They have to learn to do this, is one of the things. Just like one of the answers that one of the children came through, the mother asked, are you spending time with me every day? Are you sending signs? And his response was, I'm learning, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
They have such wonderful answers, personality coming through as well. And I like the balance that comes through of a smidgen of evidence just to show, and then some personality. A lot of the time I'll ask, can you tell your mum that you love her or something, or say a message for your mum. And I said this to one lad, and he turned around and he said, you tell her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his mum said, oh my God, that's exactly what he'd say. Other people have come through. One, they sometimes put thoughts in my head to ask. I go in with not really planning much of what I'll say, and find myself asking a question about sunflowers, for them to then respond dreams, for then the mother to say, oh my gosh, I've had a dream visit with him involving sunflowers, like a validation that I not intended to ask that. Likewise, another one with a little girl of 3, I found myself asking her, what's your favorite color?
Mm-hmm.
And she planted that so she could then turn around and say yellow and pink.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the mother's like, oh my gosh. And so on. It just builds. It's from a personal perspective, I reached out to my dad 11 years since he passed. And he was there for Tommy when Tommy passed. He's there with his mum and dad and so on. It was, but it felt so strange. And I confirmed to him, I asked him about a couple of the signs. I've not had many signs from him, and he confirmed them. And then my mother, hearing that, wanted me to get hold of her father. And now he died when I was very little. I didn't really have a relationship with him. And that was an odd thing. I asked her to send me a photo, and I focused in on this old black and white photo, called his name, felt his presence, introduced myself as his granddaughter, and my mother, his daughter, had wanted me to do this. And he answered some questions that she'd asked me to ask. And then I said, my mother, your daughter, she loves you very much. Have you got a message for her? And he's one of these that's talking from a mile away, clear, but so faint. I just know it's there. The sound line is flat, but I know it's there. And you pull it up and you pull it up and you pull it up, and I'm getting Lindy Lou just fine. And it was said in a Lindy Lou just fine. Made no sense to me. So I went to my mum and I said, this is what I'm getting. Is this mean anything to you? And she said, oh, my gosh, Sally, I've not heard that in over 60 years. That's what he used to call me when I was little.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And that sort of made me very emotional.
Yeah.
I've just been in contact with somebody that's been dead 45, 50 years. It's not been, it sounds wonderful and exciting, but it's been an emotional roller coaster ride as well.
Oh, really?
As this has opened, it's been interesting. We mentioned Kat before. She's been enormously supportive. Without me, which somehow she knew, and she sent me things and suggestions of how to ground myself and all sorts of different things. And I really needed that, because this was just such unknown territory for me. I felt like I'd gone from 0 to 50.
Yeah.
In a couple of minutes. But it's the other thing I did was I was so keen on helping as many people as I could by doing this. I'd just sit in the garden and do 4 or 5 recordings, bang, 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 bang. That was no issue. It was really lovely. And it was every time I kind of come in and ask questions. That's the easy bit. Then you might have 10 minutes worth of recording that I then transfer over to my computer, and there's a flat line. Unless they're loud and you can obviously see it, and you watch every single second.
Yeah.
That flat line. And remember, I'm deaf. I just know where there's words in that flat line, but it takes a lot of concentration, and I feel presence of the spirit when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty damn sure they're behind it.
Yeah.
And I can't do 5. I cannot do 5 on the trot. I lose it. It goes. And there was one time there was a mother waiting for more recordings to come through. And I literally had to say, I'm sorry, I can't, I have to stop for 3 hours, for a few hours. My ears have gone tired.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it, but it stopped.
Yeah.
And that was a learning curve for me too. You can't just expect, yeah. So. Yeah,
it takes a lot of energy to do what you're doing, and I know I think we talked about Sherry Pearl when you and I talked the other day, because I know she was doing some things like this, and yeah, the recording is one thing, but the parsing through and finding it and then enhancing it, and not everybody can hear all of the words. So it's interesting. You went to Suzanne Giesman and said, is this really happening? And she couldn't hear it, but there's something about the interpretation also that that requires, I think, a connection.
Yes. Yeah, because there have been times when something's very clear to me and I've passed it on and I just don't hear that.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't hear that? And that has been part of the learning curve too. And what I tend to do now is I'll sit on a recording overnight and I'll listen to it again in the morning. 99% of the time I have sent out recordings, they've been heard. So it's doing what it's meant to do. And I'm really, really pleased at that. So the majority of the time, what's going out is heard. Otherwise, I've actually stated now, if I don't think it can be heard, or if it's so quiet that I know that by pulling up the volume and then having to use static tools, it's not going to be good, I'm just not going to even attempt to do it. I will write you a transcript and that's all I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I could spend all day on something that's not going to sound good at the end of the day. I can hear it really clearly.
Yeah.
But one other thing, and this is Susan Gisman's observation, I sent her a recording of me telling my son as I walk my dog late at night, I love you. And he comes back with, I love you. Very clear. There's no sounds. And this is what I was directed to go back to her again. And I had a fear because all I kept hearing from other EVP people was you have to have a background noise. You have to have a background noise for them to use. And I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And, she used to be a linguist and she listened to this recording and she came back and she said, when I listened to the second I love you, it's got tones of your voice in it. And she found that fascinating. I found it horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
My initial thought was, oh my gosh, I said, I love you twice. That was me. And I literally thought, and it's only happened in a very small amount of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But it has happened before. And for a while I thought, this is just ridiculous. Am I going, a little crazy here? And then I realized when I went back to the original recording that hadn't got the second I love you bumped up to match sound volume wise to the first.
Yeah.
Have a sound wave for the first I love you, normal sound. The second I love you, which is crystal clear, slightly sharper pitch than mine, and more quickly said, it is so tiny, it barely bumps the sound wave. There is no way a human could have said that in such a quiet tone. So what her suggestion was on those is they are using the sound energy of my voice from my earlier comment to create the second comment.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a suggestion, but
well, I think there's something to that because even with the gibberish, the theory is, the hypothesis, I guess, is that they're taking the gibberish, which is chopped up human sounds, and they're somehow manipulating those and putting them together to form their words. So it would be a similar type of thing. They're using your energy to form the sounds that you're hearing, and we don't know how it works, and we probably won't.
I have asked. Firstly, it's funny because I'm now starting my guides. If they don't want to answer a question, they just don't, and I'm left with blank spaces. And I think it's partly to do with I'm not supposed to know that at this moment in time, and that's fine. I'm fine with it. And I did ask them, with this, the three, the spirit world, the human, and the phone, how big a part does the phone play in relation to the two other components? I've asked that question twice, and both times they came up with nothing. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of people are asking me, well, what phone have you got? What's your voice memo app?
Yeah.
It's not the phone. It's to do with me and the spirit world, and this is just the thing in the middle.
I think that's absolutely true. And it's, like I said, it's really interesting working on the Soul Phone project, because what Dr. Schwartz is trying to do with that is the spirit energy, how they're using it. And this is like physical touch. It's so light. It's so hard to measure in our world that the noise around is actually loud. We have the signal and the noise when you're in science. So the noise is so high compared to the signal that the thing is getting that subtle energy. Wow. So it's not, in that case, it is the equipment, and that's what we're really working on to make something.
I've actually asked twice now as well, since I knew we were coming on about the Soul Phone, is it going to work? And both times they came back and said yes.
Yeah, it's really been an interesting journey. I've been on the project now for about 3 or 4 years, and that's the challenge. So it's always fascinating for me to talk to someone like yourself or like Marcus, who is just he has a microphone that they've actually somehow spiritually manipulated, and he's communicating through a microphone. And how all this stuff works is crazy. And you were telling me you did the Scrabble tiles at one time too, right?
That's how I learned about Marcus. I did because of what he did, and I put a load of Scrabble tiles in a flat old cardboard pizza box under my bed, under the bed in the spare bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, the tiles were moving, and I couldn't wait to see what was going to be said. And then my puppy got in there. Been there for about a month by that stage. I kept it very secure, and she just saw the box and whoosh.
So people know Marcus, actually, that's one of the ways he started communicating with spirit. He would put Scrabble tiles in a box and put it under his bed. For some reason, it takes weeks or for whatever for them to start to manipulate them around. And I've seen some of the messages he's gotten from his daughter, and they're just incredible, like full sentences.
I might do that again. Actually, you have to be patient. You have to leave it there for a long time by the sound. But mine was shifting. They were definitely moving. And I sent him a couple of pictures as they moved, but they weren't into the forming of words yet. But going back before I forget to the messages, something else that I asked, you've seen these diagrams you get, what raises your vibration and what lowers it. These lists on either side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I tick off a lot on the what raises your box, but I also tick some off on the lowers. I still am prone to feel insecure. I can feel shy. I have things that definitely are there. I'm a human being,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
It surprises me how this has opened up. And one of the questions that I was asking them, I said, I talked about the vibration levels, and I literally said to my guides about this chart I'd seen. And I'd said, I tick off some of those boxes on the low vibration side.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I am able to do this. Why? And they came back with, in a very loud, it's really loud, ready, you are ready. Mm-hmm. And later on, the same recording probably, I'm asking, is everyone else going to be able to do what I can do with my phone? And they came back and said, not ready, I think. And I don't think they mean not everybody's ready. I think they mean some people are not ready. In other words, not a case of you can all just tap in just like that. I think there is a readiness perspective to be able to do it.
Yeah, there is something to that. The thing is, and I love having this conversation with you because we started off talking about like recognizing the signs that our loved ones give us, like the turtle and the cardinal and the songs on the radio and stuff like that. We can all open ourselves up to receiving those signs. And I've talked to people who are mediums, and some people say, well, everybody can be a medium. Anybody can train to be a medium. I don't know that I believe that. I think it's kind of like playing a musical instrument. Some of us have the ability where we can just pick it up and be like virtuosos, and some of us would have to really, really work hard to plunk out Mary Had a Little Lamb, and that's probably as far as we're going to get.
And this backs onto what you're saying, in the fact that we are all unique individuals. We are a sum of our life experiences, and in that respect, none of us can ever fully fit into another person's shoes.
Right.
And so it stands to reason then that our connection at whatever level is also going to be equally unique. What is going to work for one person, or what is a combination of things that will work for one person, will not work for another. We've all got strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
How honest can we be in recognizing what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, and what we need to work on, what we need to solidify? All those things is right back into an individual perspective. I can't make anybody else do this.
Yeah.
Each person is on their own journey. All I can do is share my story, and if any of it resonates or helps somebody else in theirs,
mm-hmm.
then that's the best it can do. And likewise with me, listening to other people's stories, and I listen to many, early on when my signs were slower and further apart and so on, I never felt not fair when I saw other people getting more. I was just like, whoa. And I would listen to the background to that happening, what happened. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same as my journey, but the more I understand, the more aware I am.
I think of the Rolling Stones song, "You Can't Always Get What You Want, but you get what you need. And I think because people have asked me about my connection with my daughter, and I can talk to people like, you know, like yourself, and I could be jealous. Well, I didn't get to, I haven't seen Shayna, you know, for example, or people say, oh, I felt my loved one touch me. And I'm like, I haven't gotten that. We all have different relationship, different things, and different things that we need. And I think we get what we need at the time. But if you're open to it, you can start to develop it, and you can, and as you're saying, you know, I'm open to follow that prompt, turn on the radio, go out and do this now. I've got, you know, I've got lots of stories where I've like just got a nudge to go out and do something, and I went out and did it, and it turned into something really amazing. And I had
Yeah.
no idea what I was doing when I wanted to do that thing.
Yeah.
So just start following those things. You know, if you get a nudge to do something, just follow it and see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it doesn't go anywhere, that's a lesson in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you.
So, well, and speaking of that, I have to tell people how you and I, you know, ended up connecting, because I guess we connected a little bit on Facebook before. We were in the same places, and I liked something that you had said, and you're like, well, if he really wanted to reach out to me, he'd reach out, and you didn't contact me. And then you said you turned over a dish the other day, and I'll post the picture. You sent me a picture of it. You said your name was on the back of the dish. So I'm like, what? But it was there on the back of the dish, B. Smith. And so you decided to contact me.
Next morning, that was literally, I looked at the message you did like, and I thought, I'd love to talk to you about this. And I thought, well, you know what? If he's interested, he'll contact me. And this is my guides nudge me in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Trust me, if I was left to my own devices, I wouldn't be meeting as many people. Raven's another one. My guides, literally, she doesn't mind me talking about it, tacked on a message on the end of a recording that I was making with a child about Raven. And from the details they gave me, I was able to find who she was.
Yeah.
And we had some lovely conversations as a result. So, you know, they nudged me, and also, and that was a big nudge. And that's when I reached out to you, and we're having this conversation. I had no idea you were involved in the Soul Phone project. And this is actually what I'd like. This is just what I'd like to do, if it's all right. Is I want to see if I can make a recording.
Yeah, sure.
There you go. I won't be able to show it to you now, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This I tend, although they were made with Tommy, not using an earpiece. I like using an earpiece when I make them, because I'm completely deaf in one ear. So when I use an earpiece, I go into my own little world from an outside perspective. There is no sound in this room. I don't know if it will work, but let me see if this earpiece is actually, yeah, it's on. Okay. So I've just gone into my standard sort of, I don't think you can see it, it's a voice memo app on my phone. I think of Tommy for a second. Tommy, can you hear me? My guide's there. Can you say hi? I've got Brian on the screen. Brian Smith, have you got a message for him? Okay, thank you. Much love. 11:45. Oh, exactly 1 minute.
Oh.
And yes, I can feel presence quite strongly. So it'd be interesting then. I'm telling you the time and the exact length, so that afterwards, I don't listen to it on my phone, because usually it's too quiet. But I will often, if I want to skip the computer, is I'll look on my iPad, because I can see the recording of the voice memo itself on there. It has the same app, and I can see the sound wave. And I can just tell when there's going to be, looking at the dots of the sound waves, if there's something there. And then I get all excited and transfer it onto my computer, onto WavePad, bump up the volume and listen to the whole lot. So a minute, it wouldn't take me long to do.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. Well, so you're doing this for other parents now, right? I think you said particularly you're doing it for parents. So can people reach out to you to have you do it, or how are you connect with people?
Yeah, I have quite a long list.
Okay.
I am trying to limit it to maybe 2 a day, maybe 3.
Yeah.
If they come through clear, and some of them really do. Some of them it's really easy. I don't do anything apart from triple the volume, cut it into recording segments that are easier to send out. That's it.
Yeah.
But others, you have to raise the voice and raise it and raise it and raise it, and then use tools to bring the static down. Some of it is slightly muffled and it's really difficult to make out what they say. So those recordings can take a long time. And what I do with some, and I have 3 at the moment, is they'll come through maybe with 2 or 3 clear comments, and the rest is really good enough to make a recording. So I'll make notes and I'll put it in my file as pending. The next day when I do another one, I'll go back to that person and see if I can get more. And I might do that 2 or 3 times, because I like to end up with a really clear name and something more than a yes or no. Yeah. If I can have them saying their name, that seems to go down really, really well. If I can have something validating that I can't possibly know, that's just brilliant. And an I love you of some sort. And also, without every single one has come back, do you spend time with your mother, with your parents every day? With yes. They say it in different ways. Yes, absolutely, sure, learning, but it's always been positive. And I always, since last November, since I could feel Tommy's presence like I just did, every time I think of him, he comes, I feel him. And then there are other times in the day I might be doing something like either the dishes, something mundane, or I might be chasing my dog that escaped. That happened once. And I feel him come. So he comes when he wants to, and he comes when I ask him to, but he's certainly not here all the time. And that's fine. I hope that he's off either having a blast or doing whatever. I know he helps other kids who transition, sudden death transitions. And I know he helps with these EVPs. With my guides have actually come through in my EVP recordings. I had one child come through, and I'm in the garden, and it got really noisy. First, the car went past on the private road behind the house. So I paused. Then an aeroplane went overhead, and I'm just rolling my eyes. And this was somebody I had not been expecting. This person came in of their own accord. And so I wasn't sure who it was in relation to, apart from the fact it related to the previous recording I'd done. They knew this previous recording. So there was a space with some quiet time. So I quickly said the name to speed up them responding before another noise was made. And my guides came in almost with a slight reprimand. It was and said, "Wait a minute." And then after then, she then came back and she said, "I'm ready."
Oh wow!
And then we went, and that was interesting. That's the first time I've heard them come in, literally say something in it, because I'm rushing for a response. And interesting.
Well, Sally, I am really glad that you reached out to me. It's like I said, it's really interesting because the timing happened to work out. That I had this slot available, and you reached out to me. When we made this happen. I think what you're doing, at where you are, everybody should say, okay, now I'm going to get my phone and make a voice memo. Maybe not everybody can do that, but we can all start to look out for those signs and feel those signs and just pour that love out. I think that's a big part of it when I hear people talk about that. Just pour that love out and, talk to your kids, know that they're still there, know they're still involved in our lives. They tell us that all kinds of ways, all kinds of times, that they're still a part of our life. So we don't have to wait till we die to see them again. We can have that relationship even right now.
Absolutely. Yes. The love is always there, even if you're not feeling them. And there are reasons, I think, that there are phases when you don't feel their presence, or in the early days, there are perhaps things that you need to be doing in this plane. I get that feeling anyway. But to know they're always there. I mean, what I was trying to say before about being able to pull in other kids just by thinking of them, to me, it exemplifies what I've been saying the last year. They are only ever a thought away. It just happens that I can feel them when they come. They're only ever, and hopefully other people will begin to do that. But in the meantime, I didn't feel him before last November. I didn't have that feeling. I sensed that he was there, and then it just happened. But before then, I didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
Just go through the process anyway of trusting and being open.
Yeah. Well, Sally, I really appreciate it. It's been fascinating talking to you and getting to meet you and learn about, your relationship with Tommy and the things you're doing. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. So I really appreciate you doing this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, asking me. I've loved it. And I'll get back to you, see if there's anything on that recording.
All right. Sounds good. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
And you. Cheers,
Bye.
Brian.
Okay. So I took a photo of the whole recording of the whole minute, and it's virtually showing a flat line for most of it. Then I took a photo again of the whole 1 minute recording with the volume ramped up big time for the whole thing. This is that same ramping up volume whole thing scenario that you see here. But this part relates to you, and what I've done is the part where I'm talking here, which looked a bit like that before. I have reduced the volume dramatically whilst increasing the volume of Brian Smith and Awesome. Because of the static that came in with that, I then had to use a cleaning out tool for the static, which is the whirling sound you can hear. I did slow Brian down just slightly because it was said too fast, but I haven't changed anything else. And I also cut the static down in the gaps, just because it's not nice to hear. So here we go.
I got Brian on the screen. Brian Smith, have you got a message for him?
Brian Smith. Awesome. Have another listen. There you go.
That's it for another episode of Grief to Growth. I sure hope you got something out of it. Please stay in contact with me by reaching out at www.grieftogrowth.com. That's growth2growth.com. Or you can text the word growth to 31996. That's simply text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. Since you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed. So hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell here, and it'll notify you when I have new content. Always, please share the information if you enjoy it. That helps me to get more views and to get the message out to more people. Thanks a lot and have a wonderful day.